It's tough to be a parent in America today. Good morning. It's Tuesday, June the 30th, and this is The Drill. Thank you very much. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. I've created this podcast to reform conservatism. My podcast is short, approximately 5 to 10 minutes long, because shorter podcasts are easier to download and listen to. I've been listening to conservative talk radio since 1989, and I grew up in a socialist household and have learned the tricks of socialism. My podcast is made available through Spreaker and can be heard on iTunes, Spotify, Google, and YouTube. Today, what can I do? Quote of the day, positive news, and parenting in the United States today. All that when I come back. Thank you. What can I do? Say no. Be prepared. Play it straight. Be literal. Be intellectual. Have the courage of your convictions. Mind your own business. Think, criticize, trust yourself, be realistic, be modern, and stand your ground. Next up, the quote of the day. Thank you. The quote of the day comes from dailyscripture.net. Lord Jesus, increase my faith in your redeeming love and power, that I may always recognize your abiding presence with me. Give me courage and strength to face every difficulty, trial, and temptation with trust in your saving help and guiding presence. Amen. Up next, good news about the right. Thank you. And this is from the GOP website, and it's 1 year later. WinRed is putting Republicans on a path to victory. And it's by the RNC chairwoman Ronna McDaniel, dated June 24th, 2020. It's no secret that our data-driven digital age running a winning political campaign today looks a lot different than it did 15, 10, or even 5 years ago. That's why at the Republican National Committee, we've made it our mission to build a political machine that reflects today's realities and allows us to connect with voters in new and innovative ways. By far, one of the most important initiatives we support is our online fundraising platform, WinRed, which launched exactly 1 year ago today. We needed a one-stop shop where Republican supporters can direct their contributions to our candidates in races across the country. None of the early success we've seen from WinRed would have been possible without the endorsement of President Trump and his leadership in getting it done. In WinRed's first year alone, we raised $450 million online, with an average gift of $40. It took Democrats 10 years to reach the same amount using ActBlue. This is a testament to a more sophisticated WinRed platform, combined with strong enthusiasm from our supporters and a unified GOP. WinRed is far more than just a new fundraising platform for us, however. It is a critical building block of our campaign infrastructure and is fully integrated into our modern approach to winning elections. President Trump and the Republican National Committee are proud to be WinRed's biggest backer. On its first birthday, WinRed has proven successful beyond our wildest dreams. We have every confidence that WinRed will prove to be a legacy item for our party and one that plays an essential role in propelling Republican candidates up and down the ticket to victory this November and for many years to come. And I mentioned this article, and I found it interesting because it does say that you can contribute directly to campaigns, because I have said many times, don't contribute to the RNC in general. If the RNC, you get letters or whatnot from the RNC that say send us money, for let's say this year's elections, don't do it, because you're going to end up, they're going to support candidates you don't want. Okay, if you want more candidates like Donald Trump at all levels, RNC is not going to give it to you. RNC is going to give you more Bushes, Jeb Bush and Steve Bush and Hosea Bush, and that's what all we're going to end up with is people like that. So if you want to make sure that you're ending up with candidates that you can fully support, give directly to individual campaigns. And this shows that there is an easy, quick, one-stop mechanism for doing that, and that's WinRed. So up next, being a parent in modern America. Oops. Thank you. I was listening to some of Rush Limbaugh yesterday, and he talked about the difficulties of being a parent in the United States today. And let's see if we can find this here. There he is. And here's a sample from his transcript from his show. Where is it? Oh. Looks like we're going to have to do this all over again. Let's see. There we go. See all. And now here we go. It's entitled, What Did I Tell You About Conservative Fathers and Millennial Daughters? Rush, there's a point that I've been making. We've got some evidence just to show you, and some people that have been irritated at this. I've talked about the number of conservative friends I've lost when their daughters, primarily, became old enough to go away to college, did so, and came back. And I don't recognize their dads anymore. They're friends. Now, I've got a story here in the stack of stuff that incidentally just came up. It's up next, and it's about how the fact that we lost the education system is why we are where we are. If you want to try to find one thing, and there's more than one thing, obviously, but if you wanted to find, say, the central point from which everything else explodes, it is the fact that we lost public education to the left, to leftist activities disguised as teachers. I have no doubt about this, and it's 2 generations worth now. One of the things that's different, as I say, is that when my brother went away to school, there's no way, even if he'd been indoctrinated as a liberal, there's no way he was going to convince my dad of it when he came home from school to talk. But that's happening, and particularly where the students are daughters. Grab soundbite number 4. This is Robert Reagan. This is Fox and Friends Sunday. Jebediah Bila was talking to this guy, Robert Reagan, who is a Republican Michigan State House candidate. She said, quote, "Your daughter tweeted out opposition to you running for the Michigan State House. Well, your house must be really interesting at holiday time. These holiday dinners, political discussions start," unquote. So this guy's daughter is campaigning against him, and here is his reaction. Reagan: "I was deeply hurt. That stung. When I first saw that, I was like, quote, 'Oh my goodness, are you serious?' Unquote. It has to do with the indoctrination from the liberal and leftist socialist Marxist universities. You have to understand what these college campuses are like today. And these young women and young men, they want to fit into the group. So the whole idea that this is a bastion of free speech and ideas, that just doesn't fly anymore." And real quick, my aside here is that his saying about you have to understand. Understanding is irrelevant. Don't buy into that. You'll get that from the left, the right, the middle. You have to understand. Bullshit. And I hope I've made myself clear. Bullshit. You don't have to understand. What you do need to do is be able to tell the difference between right and wrong. And then so you ask, is it the university's job or mission to politically indoctrinate its students? No. So therefore it's wrong. End of story. Back to Rush. Rush, here's the next one very quickly. He wasn't finished. Reagan: I really do applaud her. She's one special young lady, and I'm sure none of us has expected this to go as viral as it has, and especially as a father and a family. You don't want this stuff going out to public. You know, families are supposed to be safe spaces. Rush. Ha! Reagan. And you have these discussions privately. I think it's just kind of caught us all off guard. But yeah, she's one special young lady, and I'm just really happy for her. Rush. All right, stop it. So the point is, now she goes away to school, gets indoctrinated, realizes she's been taught that her father's a scourge, and she starts actively campaigning against him. And what does he do? Sigh. And I'm not trying to get the guy in trouble, believe me, but he talks about how proud he is. Special young lady, really happy for her. Don't doubt me that this stuff is happening out there, folks. Break transcript. Rush. By the way, Michigan State Republican candidate Robert Reagan, he's the guy saying that he is more conservative than I am, that he's to the right of Rush Limbaugh. I'm really not selecting him to be critical of him. It's just that his story fits an agenda. It fits a series of events that's happening all over the country out there. Break transcript. Rush. Lest anybody think that I don't know what's going on here, I'm going to fully explain that I do know exactly what's going on here. And even though I know exactly what's going on, even though I understand it, there's a part of it that worries me because we've lost our country to multiculturalism. And that has happened in the schools. And we've lost our country to multiculturalism in the process. I mean, multiculturalism exists for one reason, that's to destroy the dominant American culture, of which there is one and of which there has been since our founding. And it is among the greatest cultures in the history of the world, as evidenced by American standard of living, Americans' morality. But even if it's no better than anybody else's, it's still ours. It's a distinct American culture. Oh, and let me interject something. What he's really looking for in his support of American culture versus multiculturalism is it is the status quo. American culture is the status quo. And if we're losing to multiculturalism, it is because we're giving it away. We are handing victories to the left. Back to Rush. It's a distinct American culture that a vast majority of the world wants to be part of. Early immigrants came to this country to become Americans. They didn't come here to establish their own cultures on American soil like is happening now. So look, not to beat a dead horse, but I know what goes on in the homes of these families who are young college co-eds, primarily girls. I don't think this is happening too much with the sons, but with daughters, I think this is going to town. The daughters go away to school, they've come home to conservative families, and they've been radicalized. And it's usually around the issue of race. The multicultural curricula has done its job of enforcing guilt on particularly affluent, white, female college students. They've made them feel guilty as hell, and they've done it by evoking sympathy. I'll explain this in a minute in greater detail. So the young co-ed comes home, and look, I know a bunch of fathers, friends of mine, rock-ribbed conservatives who've given it up rather than lose their daughters. It's that simple. Now, in some cases, these guys are themselves being converted, but more than that, it is they don't want to lose their daughters. So their daughters come home and tell them, Dad, you and Mom screwed up the planet, you screwed up the country, you're racist, systemic racist, you don't even understand it, but I'm going to tell you how, and you are ruining America. Dad says, sputtering, I just tried to give you the best life I could. What are you talking about? At the end of it, he doesn't want to lose his daughter. He said, okay, maybe you got a point. So that brings us back to Robert Reagan in Michigan. This is the state Republican official who's described himself as to the right of me, and as if to prove what I've been saying about how young white women have become indoctrinated at college, they come home and explain to their parents how the parents have been wrong all their lives. Their parents are part of the problem, systemic racism in America. And Mr. Reagan I don't know if he's blaming, but he certainly is calling attention to college for his daughter coming out publicly against him, which is what she has done. She has come out against her own father in his election bid because he is part of the systemic racist problem in America. Now stop and think of that for a second. I know it's not unique, and I know these kids have been turned against their parents since time immemorial, but for a bunch of left-wing jerk multiculturalist college professors to do this, and they don't just turn these kids against their parents, they do it with hatred. They get these kids, these young women, hating either their parents or other aspects of American culture. But he says he's proud of his daughter. He blames college for her anti-endorsement of him. He said, quote, when they go off to college, quite frankly, they get involved in these Marxist, socialist universities, start getting indoctrinated with things that are completely polar opposite from how you raised them, unquote. His daughter's name is Stephanie. She sent out a tweet last Tuesday that read, quote, if you're in Michigan and 18 plus, please, for the love of God, do not vote for my dad for state rep. Tell everyone, unquote. Tweet went viral with more than 177,000 likes by Thursday night, 2 days later. The candidate said, Mr. Reagan said, quote, he was hurt by the tweet, but he's proud of his daughter. I'm the father. I'm human. You feel things like that. One of the things I did with my kids, all 4 of them, I always said, focus on the truth. I'm really excited that they thought they had a solid enough relationship with me where they could diss me on social media and know that I'm not going to disown them. So that, Chuckles, I'm sorry, Mr. Reagan, I can't imagine the circumstance you're in, and he's proud that they all have a solid enough relationship with him that they could totally disrespect him on social media and know that he's not going to disown them. Summarized. Yeah, my dad won't do anything to me. My dad, he knows the truth. He knows the systemic racism. I'm going to stop here. So the comment that I want to make here is that all of this has to do with the way that people have been trained to be parents. And this goes all the way back to the 60s. In the 60s, there was, when television was brand new, there was images that were being beamed into every household of kids in Haight-Ashbury that were runaways. A good percentage of them were runaways. They were teenagers, and they were going to Haight-Ashbury to tune in, turn on, and drop out. And they would drop some acid and then end up diving out of a second or third floor window, injuring or killing themselves. And so parents across the country were horrified and terrified of the prospect that their children might be next, that they might lose their children to the hippies and the yippies, and that those kids may end up out in Haight-Ashbury dropping acid and ruining their lives. So parents didn't know what to do about it. Well, here comes the left writing books. That's another part of the media that doesn't get as much attention as it should with television, radio, and newspapers and magazines, but is books. The left is always quick to go ahead and try to fill the gap with books. And a lot of books started appearing about how to be a parent in this new age. Everything in the 60s and 70s was revolutionary. There was the sexual revolution, which never occurred, never happened. There was no such thing. It was a myth, so that people could write books to tell you how to do things differently, how men could dating differently and all that stuff. So anyways, they did the same thing with parenting. How to be a parent. And their message overall, every book after book, was don't be a parent. Parents were disciplinarians. Okay, they discipline their kids, and they're also the only leaders, I contend, that the only leaders in a democracy are parents. So when you hear politicians talking about where's the leadership, or I'm a leader, or so-and-so is not leading proper, no. Politicians, office holders are not leaders. Ultimately, they are representatives, and they are to do as they're told by the people. The only true leaders in the country are parents. Parents, it used to be when I was growing up that when you're part of a household, that household had a political identity. It was a Democrat household or it was a Republican household. It also went so far as to have an automobile brand identity. There were families that were strictly Chevy families. Okay, all they bought were Chevys. They were loyal to Chevy. There were Ford families that bought nothing but Fords. And so if you're a son or a daughter and you come home, you're in a Ford family and you come home with a Chevy, it's going to make some waves. There are going to be some disappointed people in that household. Would they disown you? No. Would there be some consternation? Would there be some confrontation over it? Sure. But I want to get back to the political aspects of it. You were told by your parents to be a Democrat or to be a Republican, and you were told why you should be that way. Now, naturally, as a kid, once you go off to college, you're an adult. If you decide to change your mind, you can change your mind. But the point is, your parents would instruct you. This is the proper political view to have. And Hillary Clinton grew up in a Republican household and was indoctrinated, if you will, into being a Republican. And when she first went to school, she was a Republican, believe it or not. And she later on became not only a Democrat, but a radical Democrat. But again, that's what parents are supposed to do. You're supposed to help to shape and mold your children. If you tell your kids when they're asking about politics, well, go ahead and make up your own mind. You know, I'm not going to try to influence you. You are failing as a parent. And that's what I suspect happened with Mr. Reagan in Michigan. Okay, that's why he says, yeah, I'm proud of her. Because he probably told her when she's asking questions about politics, well, you're going to have to make up your own mind, instead of saying, being a conservative is the right thing to do. And this is why it's the right thing to do. And furthermore, prepping your child by saying, when you go to college, there's going to be a lot of left-wing kook professors. And they're going to try and tell you differently. They're going to try and brainwash you. And this is the way they're going to try to do it. So you're at least preparing your child, give them some type of prep. They may end up getting brainwashed anyways, but at least you gave it your best shot. Because all Mr. Reagan is doing now is setting his daughter up for a lifetime of disappointment, frustration, and failure. Because the left has been nothing if not a failure forever. And so by accommodating her and her left-wing views, and this is what a lot of the parents are doing, the fathers, I'm worried about losing my kid. Well, you know what? You already lost her. Because you didn't bother to prep your daughter. You didn't bother to sit down and explain to her the facts of life. What conservatism truly is, what liberalism truly is, and why she should be a conservative. And by not prepping her for an assault on her political knowledge. Notice I didn't say beliefs. So it's the same thing. Let me compare it to religion. You grow up in a religious household. You grow up in a Christian household. Are your parents, when you become 16, 17, you start asking fairly deep questions, and start asking questions about religion and other religions, are your parents going to really tell you, well, there is Muslim and there's a Jewish faith, and you're in a Catholic household? Are your parents really going to say, it's up to you? If you want to be Jewish, yeah, go ahead and be Jewish. If you're Muslim, go ahead and be Muslim. Really? Especially when Christianity says that if you don't come to Christ, you go to hell. Are your parents going to abandon your soul? No. They're going to tell you that Christianity is the way, more specifically, Catholicism is the way to go. And that you must be Catholic. You must be. And they're going to do their best to make sure that you do that. Not because they want to be a dictator, but because they want what's best for you. So, it is parents that have to realize that if you allow yourself to be intimidated, you allow yourself to be scared into trying to be a friend to your son or daughter, you are hurting them. You are abandoning them right there. You don't have to worry about what's going to happen in college because you have abdicated your authority and you have abdicated your responsibilities. And as a true conservative, you can't do that. Back in a minute. Who is a true conservative? He's the person that has the courage of his convictions and is confident in what he knows. He's the person that understands that cultural conservatism is more important than political conservatism. He's not selfish but minds his own business. He acts like an adult. He is patriotic and uses common sense. He expresses what he knows and does so with certainty. He makes judgments, refuses to speculate, speaks clearly and definitively, and is not afraid to say no. He's open-minded, asking why, rather than why not. He is consistent, credible, and influential, not ashamed of his existence, unafraid to learn or correct his mistakes. He is a normal American, and he is better than the socialist. He's a better friend, father, brother, family member, and a better person, period. You have to know that. If you don't know with every fiber of your being that being a true conservative is best, then you are wasting your time. And that brings me to the end of another episode of The Drill. Remember, be honest, be smart, be beautiful, and always ask yourself, what is real? How do I know? What do I do about it? I'm Ron, and that's The Drill.